Right, you're very welcome. You're very welcome, really, of course, and this man, and Des, and his wife, and yourself, of course, you're very, very welcome. And the very first room here is to give an introduction to this region over the last 8,000 years. Those models depicate that landscape, and were made by students that I used to take on school tours out through the fields. They were made by students from Davos College, Castlebar. This woman here, her father-in-law, Peter Casby, he was the teacher and lecturer there in the school at the time. So it was those kids that made those models, and they depicate the landscape within a 5-mile radius of the house. And this here is Mayo, 8,000 years ago, when first inhabited. The people lived as hunter-gatherers, living in huts like those over the skins of animals, and living like this, we believe, for something like 2,000 years.
Yes, yeah.
2,000 years later than, or 6,000 years ago, the first farmers, cultivating the land and building the stone walls. Living in houses like this, built of earth or stone and roofed with rushes, and the tombs where they were buried, a core tomb, a dolmen and a wedge tomb, often referred to as the giants' graves or Diarmuid and Gráinne's beds.
Yeah.
What seems to have happened here was our climate was warmer, drier 5,000 years ago than it is now.
That's right.
And as a result of the climatic change, the vegetation rots down, concealing much of the landscape here in blanket bog. And over the thousands of years then, the bog continually growing, till about 50, 60 years ago, when a man cutting peat or turf at North Mayo, seeing stone walls coming from underneath the bog, he questioned that, started excavating them, discovering a prehistoric landscape hidden underneath the bog, older than the pyramids, hence the discovery of the Cage of Fields, the oldest Stone Age settlement in Europe, and typical then of a landscape to this region. Up along here then you have the Bronze Age, 4,000 years ago, and in front of me is a Bronze Age cooking site where they did their cooking in a pit in the ground. Digging a hole in a wet area, they lined it with stones or timber. The water seeped in then and filled the pit with water. Lighting a fire then beside it, they heated stones in the fire the size of your head, and threw the hot stones into the pit of water to bring it to the boil. Tying up their meat in sedge grass, they suspend the meat down into the boiling water, using a hot stone to keep it boiling. And myself and a friend do this from time to time here at the lake, and we can boil 120 gallons of water using that principle in less than 50 minutes. And we can cook the meat at 30 minutes to the pound, 30 minutes over, which is about 3 minutes slower than your conventional oven today. In at the back is a group of standing stones, standing in a straight line. Those are aligned to the sun on a given day of the year to give a summer or winter guide in time. Ring forts were built 1000 plus BC and lived into the 17th century. Those were the farmsteads of the people. The people living inside those enclosures and little houses. And when they became obsolete in the 16th, 17th century then, right up to 1964, many of them were used for the burial of unbaptized children, hence they were referred to as fairy forts or fairy rings. Crannogs are artificial islands built out in lakes, and a structure similar to a ring fort built upon them, occupied by chieftain families. The wet marshy area that's 200 yards down the road there on your left hand side as you leave, you'll see where the reeds are coming right up to the edge of the road. That area on your left hand side was a lake that dried up in the 30s. When it dried up, it revealed in the centre of Crannog 105 feet in diameter with the ruins of one house on it, 3,000 years old. The Iron Age, where they extracted the iron ore from the rock, melting it down to make iron objects. And that's where much of our oak forest was used, because they chopped down the oak then to make charcoal used in the smelting of iron ore. In at the back you have the Christian period, and of course there were 2 iron smeltings in County Mayo, one at Furnace Newport and the other at Callow-Foxford. And I discovered the site at Callow-Foxford in 1989 and was used by Lord Sligo making arms for the siege of Limerick. And you see you also had the iron furnace at Furnace near Newport. In at the back you have the Christian period, the arrival of St. Patrick in 432 and the Christianisation of Ireland. As a result of that, monastic sites spring up, which are industries, a place of learning, plundered about 1,000 years ago, so they built, we believe, the round towers then to try and protect them. 5 round towers in Mayo, Killala at North Mayo, Meelick outside Swinford, Turler near the Museum of Country Life, Aghgower near Westport, and Ball in central Mayo. Up along here sees the arrival of the Normans to Ireland in 1169, and when the Normans came, they set up temporary accommodation to live in called the Mott and Bailey. A timber and earth structure lived in for about 50, 60 years while building the main castle itself. And there then you have the Norman castle at Strade. That castle, the seat of the MacJordans, who were the Norman chieftain family in this region.